What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at the adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales, which in typical Square Enix fashion is a honestly kind of bizarre name for an actually interesting game. So what I am bringing you is actually a look at the prologue demo for this title, which launched I believe yesterday from the time of this video. And the reason I wanted to cover it is because it's honestly a bizarre mix of a lot of other types of games in a way that I felt was pretty interesting, but the game itself is trying to bill it as a sort of action RPG. But if I were to describe it myself, I would say it's like old school Zelda meets some of their newer HD 2D stuff. Now personally, I'm a really big fan of the HD 2D art style, and that is what initially caught my eye with this. However, it is also, at first, a little cutesy in the beginning, and then suddenly people start dying, and the story actually managed to pull me in over the course of the prologue, which itself is a few hours long. But let's start at the beginning. First and foremost, as a demo, it's actually running pretty well, which is always nice to see, but your progress from this demo will carry over to the full version, which is meant to be releasing on June 18th. So here in a few weeks, a little under a month away, in fact. And if I can free up some time, I'll probably take a look at it because of how much I wound up enjoying this. But if you're not comfortable with the action side of things, it does offer a variety of different difficulty modes to help you out, but it's not the craziest thing I've seen or anything like that. The game kicks off by putting us in the role of Elliot, an adventurer from the kingdom of Huther, a kingdom that is being protected by a barrier that is upheld by the princess there, and after the discovery of some nearby ruins which may contain some secrets of magic, which they are hoping can ease the princess's burden, things get complicated fast, mainly because that dungeon ultimately leads to a doorway which just so happens to be a portal through time, which the nefarious advisor to the king, as always, sees as his opportunity to jump through time and seize power and become a king himself, which is obviously a bit of a problem because of the typical time travel paradoxes that we are concerned about enacting here. And what we are left with is an adventure through time across 4 different time periods, in fact, though we only see 2 in the demo, to set all of this right. Along the way, we're going to find and upgrade a whole lot of stuff. In the typical like old school Zelda style, you're going to pick up a bunch of upgrades in the forms of items that then allow you to do more. And then there's also some more traditional RPG type upgrades via the Magicite system, which you can turn into upgrades and then assign them to weapons. Now, on the action side of things, there are ultimately up to 7 weapon types, and apparently you're going to get some hands-on proper magic a little later on as well. Now, you're supposed to get a sidekick named Faye, who is this fairy that's going to follow you around, which is the source of some of this magic, but for the demo, you're mostly accompanied by the princess in your ear via a spell, and she's able to heal you, and it's my understanding that turns into Faye later, who shows up at the end of the demo to provide the magic you'll be using for the rest of the game. And while acquiring that stuff is progression in and of itself, the Magicite system is interesting. So what you typically get for defeating bosses and you can find elsewhere are Magicite shards. You bring those back to a vendor, a specific one in fact, who can then turn it into various Magicite that you can then slot into weapons based on the type that it is. You'll have boxes to hold these Magicite in, and you can upgrade the size of those boxes to add more Magicite to your weapons, and this is where you're going to come up with various combos. So in addition to the weapon types, you have Magicite, which can then adjust and alter the way those weapons play. And that's all before you even start getting your magic and everything. And there's a fair bit of variety there, but also the more typical like Zelda-esque stuff where you're going to get your hands on bombs and you can put those down. But being able to not only have different weapon types, but also upgrade specific aspects of those weapons is enjoyable for a game like this, I found. But outside of the weapons, you have a basic shield that's going to allow you to block attacks. You can also just jump out of the way potentially. And each weapon has a charge up. Now what that charge up does is based on the weapon itself. So for instance, the boomerang, if you charge that up, it will actually pause at the height of its reach, so to speak, and spin there a few times, and if you can catch an enemy right at that moment, it deals a significant amount of damage, whereas other weapons might just do a regular old heavy attack, or the spear does a charge move, that kind of thing. But then there's the world itself. This is, again, a little more of a classic Zelda experience, with you having large areas to explore that can then lead you into dungeons. There are shards of life, it calls them, which are basically pieces of a heart. You get 4 of those, you get more health overall. which is one of the primary rewards for exploration, and you can find those by doing little trials you can find, or simply just finding them in chests here and there. But the rest of it is exploring the seemingly like just little island you're on, but across 4 different time periods in the end, and seeing how those change as you go. But there are also side quests to go alongside all of that stuff, which I thought was interesting. Most of those seem super basic so far, really just like go here, kill this thing, or collect this thing and come right back. None of them have been particularly like grand or game-changing, anything like that, but they do offer up a little bit of extra things to do and typically provide you the money you're going to need to get other upgrades, because what you can go to stores and find are things like accessories or the weapons themselves, or magic jars, which enable you to carry more charges of potions around with you, which can be for things like healing or simply powering up your abilities, stuff like that. And then there's, I guess you could call it platforming given the camera angle and everything. There is a small element of maneuverability around the environment, because you can just straight up jump, which does allow you to traverse the given terrain around you. They play into that a little bit here and there with some small puzzles, adding hazards along the way for those jump paths, and then that combined with moving some things around to create a path to jump across seems to be a thing here, and earning some of that progression seems to be the goal here. But putting all of that together, I gotta say this was a little more impressive than I went into it thinking, with a name like The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales, which to be honest is just not a title that instills confidence in the game. But happy to say that having actually experienced it a bit, it is more fun than I was anticipating. But it does have at least one big problem I noticed pretty much immediately, because it's very hard not to, and that is that the princess at least talks way too much. And then I would assume this also carries forward to the fairy later, but that's kind of where the demo ends, so it's hard to say. But the princess is just constantly talking. She often spoils puzzles like right as you get to them even. Now, I will say there is a setting for this, but even like the lowest frequency, it's still a little much. So honestly, I think they still need to go back and adjust that a bit. But if they can make that change, which seems relatively simple in practice, alongside keeping up the momentum that they've built up with the prologue here, and I think this game has the potential to be something really interesting, which is, of course, why I wanted to go ahead and cover it. And again, it is releasing just a few weeks from now. I am currently quite busy. I have several games to get through as it stands, but if I can clear my schedule by the time this game releases, I may well jump in and do a review for this one. But as for today, I think that is pretty much going to do it. So certainly hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about this one down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.